Let's do 55 minutes of business. That's what we do on Business Incorporated, only on Channels Television. And here's what we have prepared for you today. Well, the adoption of solar energy is expanding, but also there are risks. We'll talk about that. Elevate Africa is a program by the royal family, the Atuashe, the third royal family. We'll give gist on that for you. United States is empowering women in Nigeria through the Academy of Women Entrepreneurs. It's Business Incorporated. I'm Ini John Mekwa, and we do business. We start from the global space now, telling you what happened with oil prices. It rose on Thursday after a large interest rate cut from the United States Federal Reserve. But Brent is still hovering around its lowest levels, below $75, on expectations of weaker global demand. Now let's look at those numbers in close proximity. 81 cents added to Brent, but it's still, as that said, less than the $75, $74.08 a barrel. That's 0.67%. Of WTI of the United States is also up 0.58%. But at $71.23. Yes, that big rate cut yesterday from the United States Central Bank, half a percentage point interest rate cut, typically boosting economic activity and energy demand. But the market also saw it as a sign of weaker U.S. labor market that could slow the economy. Weak demand from China's slowing economy also continued to weigh on investors' mind. We're still in the global space now. Gold prices held steady on Thursday after hitting a record high in the previous session after the United States Federal Reserve obviously delivered that supersized interest rate cut. Look at the numbers at this time. Spot gold is unchanged, already priced in that 50 basis point cut that we saw. So it's still $2,562.85 unchanged, while U.S. gold futures dropped 0.4%, $2,587.40. Now, the Fed kicked off a larger than usual half percentage cut reduction, and Jerome Powell said that that's what meant to show policymakers their commitment to sustain a low unemployment. Look at all the metals at this time. We see spot silver up 0.7%, $30.26, and platinum is also up 0.4%, $972.06. Palladium was on the flip side, dropped 0.2%, $1,059.97 per ounce. Well, still talking about that, U.S. Central Bank lowering its interest rate for the very first time in more than 4 years, and bigger than expected cuts, even though not as much as some other analysts had expected. Well, expectations from that, from Mr. Bismarck Rwani, the Managing Director of Financial Derivatives Company, believes that this would mean a weaker dollar, which should be a plus for the Naira. He made the comment on Business Morning earlier today.
The Nigerian market is getting more internationalized. In other words, people can invest in dollar instruments in Nigeria right now. The Securities and Exchange Commission is making that possible. However, what we need to realize, the U.S. economy is the largest economy in the world. It's about almost 27% of total output. And therefore, whatever happens in the U.S. affects all other markets. What are we saying here? We're saying that certain prices of commodities in this market are now beginning to show signs of improvement. For example, the price of a basket of tomatoes is now down 63% to 22,000 naira. Palm oil, as you know, has come down by 12.5% to 7,000. And as of this morning, I understand the price of flour has gone in the markets have gone up to 70,000 because of some things happening. But beans has become quite unaffordable. Beans is at 180,000 naira. It's gone up by almost 20% in the last 2-3 weeks.
The president of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, is asking every stakeholder, especially those in the organized private sector, to engage actively on the reforms, tax reforms, and provide valuable feedback to ensure that the tax system becomes a tool for revenue generation and promoting sustainable economic development. Mr. Idahosa, who was speaking at the LCCI FIRS Organized Private Sector Stakeholders Engagement in Lagos, believes that there's a growing need for collaboration between the private sector and government to ensure that tax policies support business innovation and competitiveness
As some of these new changes are proposed, it's important for the taxpayers to provide a feedback, to say to government, this may work, this may not work, and why it will not work. That process is going on. For example, the proposed VAT increase, the VAT increase has not been finalized because there was immediate feedback from the private sector that what we need in Nigeria is not increase in the rates of the value-added tax. What we need is an expansion of collection so that every Nigerian can pay their own fair share of value-added tax, rather than increasing the value-added tax for the small number of economic operators that are currently paying. Because we have a large population and we have a large business network around the country, over 47 million SMEs and big companies. If we are able to expand value-add tax collection at the current rate, we'll raise a lot more revenue.
With over 800 Nigerian women as alumni, the United States Consulate in Lagos has launched the second part of the Academy of Women Entrepreneurs. They call it AWE. The three-day program had the Consul General, Will Stevens, expressing the target of putting Nigeria at the fore of digital economy and fostering innovation in Nigeria.
Women acting out what is normal when they meet, be it at formal or informal gatherings. This time, it's at the instance of the Academy of Women Entrepreneurs 2.0 launch. As the name implies, this is for business, as the United States government is supporting and empowering women by creating platforms for them to showcase their products and services.
Crispy, normal Nigerian food, right? But now we've packaged it on the go, and we have different varieties.
The Consul General in Lagos, Will Stevens, shares the reason for focusing on women.
You are the very backbone of this economy. This is where the growth is coming from. 90% of businesses in Nigeria are small and medium enterprises. And 40% of those are owned by women. And probably those are the 40% that are profitable, are the ones that are owned by women. And so having the Academy of Women Entrepreneurs, where we support you and we support your growth and connect you to the United States, is such a cool thing. But two things I want to talk about. First of all, how you support each other, because this to me it's what sets apart AWE in Nigeria from AWE in other countries. It's the cohorts. It's the fact that you stay connected, that you have your WhatsApp group. I love that you're supporting each other, investing in each other, and seeing each other grow.
Members of the AWE community say the benefits are many.
My journey so far with AWE, learning how to be a better entrepreneur, learning how to better manage your funds, how to grow your business better, and most importantly is the community of women that I have been opportuned to get to work with. From them you get to purchase stuff, they also get to purchase from you, and basically just have a beautiful hub where we can all work together to grow each other's businesses.
The U.S. Consul says that the AWE program will continue with focus on social media, e-commerce, artificial intelligence, among others.
Now, there's a royal message from you. It's from His Majesty Ogami Atuashe III, the Olu of Warri, and Her Majesty Olori Atuashe III, the Queen Consort of Warri Kingdom. They are the founders of Elevate Africa, and they package this message just for you.
Elevate Africa isn't about shifting perceptions. It's about crafting a new reality. We bring together thought leaders and innovators to spark dialogue and drive action. We empower the next generation through fellowships that are more than just opportunities. They are catalysts for transformation. And through our think tanks, we are not just discussing ideas, we are engineering solutions for the challenges that we face as a continent. Two paths, one purpose. Whether it's through the World Wear Foundation or through Elevate Africa, my mission is unchanging: to elevate the lives of my people and to shine a light on Africa's boundless potential. We are rewriting the narrative of our continent, one that isn't confined by our past or even the struggles of our present, but one that is fueled by the promise of tomorrow. Our work is intricately aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. From driving quality education to championing gender equality, from fostering economic growth to taking decisive action on climate change, everything we do is a step towards a shared global vision for sustainable development. So this isn't just for Africa, it's for the world. Because when Africa rises, humanity rises. But this is not a journey that I can take alone. I need you, my global family, to stand with us. Your voice, your support, your heart. Together, we can build a future where Africa's potential is not just realized, but celebrated, where our stories resonate across the globe, and where our impact is undeniable. So I invite you, join us on this journey of elevation and transformation. Let's not just dream of change, let us be the change. Through the Royal Wear Foundation and through Elevate Africa, I'm hoping that together we will rise. Together we will shape a future that is bright, not just for Africa, but for the world. Thank you.
I guess we can call that a royal invitation to shape the world together, coming from Her Majesty Olori Atuashe III. Now, let's talk more about Elevate Africa, what it's about, and perhaps you would find your place somewhere there. Following that royal invitation, we're having this discussion with Mr. Daniel Ikunobe. He is the lead consultant for Elevate Africa. We also have Dr. Akinpelu, senior consultant to the Office of His Majesty Agame Atuashe III and Her Majesty Olori Atuashe III. You're welcome to the program, gentlemen. So let me start with you, Mr. Ikunobe, to tell us what Elevate Africa really is about. I know we did hear that invitation and the explanation of it, but in reality, help us to relate with it.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Great.
Okay, great.
Great. So I said that Elevate Africa is an initiative founded by His and Her Royal Majesties to help to elevate the narrative of Africa. One, how Africans see themselves, how they are perceived and received internationally. We want to change the narrative where Africa is not just on the receiving end, but that we are creating value, projecting our culture, and all of the great things happening across the continent. So we're bringing together leaders from across the continent, across industry, national leaders to come, and then we are helping to articulate clearly a new vision for the continent across various genres.
All right, Dr. Akinpelu, we understand there are three cardinal pillars, for this, the Power Room Fellowship. Can you run us through this, so help us to understand what these cardinal pillars are and what they have to do with achieving this reshaping of the world, which we've heard about?
Thank you very much, Ini. I will just pick a cue from what Daniel just said. Is the vision of His or Royal Majesty You know, they are leaders on the continent. We call them transformational leaders, and they want to empower Africans. And for this to happen, a lot of systems thinking needs to come into place so that we get the right funnel so that we can bring about transformative change. So this is not just trying to work on the fruit on the tree, but trying to deal with things right from the root system. You know, and this is going to come out from 3 platforms, which we call the pillars. The first one is what you call the convening. The convening is where we're telling our story. The convening is the first place to be able to get attraction to say, this is what we are discussing, this is what we are about, and we can get the buy-in of the world. So and that's why we are having the convening happening October 10th and 11th here in Abuja, Nigeria, for starters, for conversations to take place there. And in that place, you are going to have power rooms happening, you are going to have roundtable sessions, you are going to have general session, and a lot more where we are going to be exhibiting everything about the African continent and the rich heritage. The second part of Elevate Africa is what you call the fellowship. Now, the fellowship is a part of the institution where you are bringing global ambassadors, mid-career level guys, and catalysts who are starters, just like a funnel, so that we can raise them to become a new generation of leaders. So this is going to be a well-tailored and bespoke African fellowship, one of its kind, you know, that will bring about transformation for these people. And this is going to lead us to the third part, which is what is called the think tank, because here we're going to be driving research and innovative solutions right from the fellowships. These are the data that we're going to use to be able to transact with the African continent, to be able to produce what is called the homegrown solution for our own bespoke challenges. So if you look at that funnel, you find out that Elevate Africa is really on a mission to transform Africa and change the narration and the perspective around it, right from the convening to the fellowship program, then to the think tank. And I dare to say this, that this is going to be driven by a very high power media, because that's how we're going to tell our story. And this is all in line with the SDG, from education to climate change to women and girl inclusion and all of that. It's a very balanced system program that I think Africans should look out for. Is going to transform the land.
Yeah, Mr. Kunobe, I'll just stay with you. I hear you say Africa, 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 and of course the name of the program is Elevate Africa, but people would say that charity should begin at home. So I wonder why it's not Nigeria, but just hold your thoughts for a bit before you tell us why it's not Elevate Nigeria, but Elevate Africa. I'll just turn to our viewers to say, our viewers on DSTV, we will be handing you over now to Delta State, where there's a closing ceremony of the 8th National Youth Games. It's holding at Stephen Keshi Stadium in Asaba, Delta State capital. So that's for our DSTV viewers, but our viewers on our UK platform as well as our local stations, we're staying on this conversation. So Mr. Kunobi, I was asking, why Elevate Africa? Shouldn't we start from home, Elevate Nigeria, or probably even Elevate Delta State, as we have seen?
So I like the way His and Her Royal Majesty say it, is from worry to the world. And the truth is that Africa is a continent of kings and a continent of kingdoms and nobles across the continent. And what they've committed to is to exemplify, as Dr. Akingpelu has said, transformational leadership. And in order for us to achieve the goals that we require, we need to build a bridge across the continent, strengthen how we exchange knowledge, capabilities, and also trade and commerce. And so we cannot do it alone. We have to be collaborative, build strong partnerships and alliances across the continent. From the global perspective, Nigeria is seen as just one country or one nation among the committees of nations. But it's important when we are able to band together as a bloc across the continent, and then we will then look and appear stronger when we engage on a global stage.
All right, so let's know the speakers. Let me just stay with you there, Mr. Kunebe. Who are the speakers? What's the theme? We know it's all about Africa and the world, reshaping, transformation. But what would be the focus and who are the speakers?
So we have a large contingent of speakers. One of them is Her Excellency, former President of Mauritius, Amina Gurib Fakim. And then we'll also have the former president Vice President of Liberia, Her Excellency Madam Joel Taylor. We have the Vice President of the Chandler Foundation, Tim Hanstad, going to be with us. And we have a number of other dignitaries from across the world. We are having Kim Schofield from the U.S. as well, a young
Mayor.
A young senator, and all of that. We have such people coming in and are going to be part of the entire program. CEOs from across the continent representing countries like Zambia. We are having a senior advisor coming in from Zambia. We are having senior people coming in from Kenya. We are having others from other parts of the world, the US, Netherlands, and all of that. So it's going to be a robust conversation. And of course, a great deal of representation from the country itself. We'll have the First Lady will also be present, and of course our host, His Royal Majesty Ogiame Atuwashe III, and Her Royal Majesty Olori Atuwashe III as well.
Yeah, interesting lineup there, and a lot of big names and big faces. But Dr. Akinpelu, how do we move from just the talks to the work? How do we get these talks, great ideas, to materialize and actually bring about the transformation we are talking about?
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Ini. If you want a real transformation, you don't react, you don't anticipate, you go back to the design table. So it means that you are going to affect 3 levels before transformation comes to play. So for example, you would deal with what is called you deal with the structure or the system, you would deal with the behavioral pattern, and number 3, that takes you to the level of dealing with what is called the mental model of people. So many things that has happened to us in Africa is because we have not been able to affect the mental models of people. And that's systems thinking at work. So you look at it, you tell yourself, there's an idea to transform the African continent. You want to tell the stories. We want to ensure that the perception around Africa changes and Africa rises and all of that. So how would this happen? That's why I talked about the pillars, that were subject to what is happening on the SDG and the Agenda 2063. It starts first with a social dialogue. It starts with a conversation. With a conversation, you are affecting the minds of people. With a conversation, you are getting people aware. With a conversation, people are beginning to understand that, okay, it is time that we can't keep talking about this. Now, narrowing down the convening, I talked about what is called the fellowship program, where you're going to get a small number of people, incubate them, get them diverse kinds of facilitators, put them into lots of field works and researches for them to carry out. Then we'll begin to bring out real solutions in terms of data and from research perspective, so that from a scientific point of view, we can tell our stories better. So you see that Elevate Africa is already on the run with that kind of system and that kind of model. At the end of the day, you would find out that the mental model and the perception of how people view Africa begins to change. And you know what? It's going to be little by little, one at a time. And like I said, we are on a mission. And the mission would take some time, but we are really sure that this is going to happen, transformation on the continent of Africa.
All right, I know this is supposed to be building on the successes of Royal Iwere Foundation, which looks at social challenges in Warri kingdoms and all of that. And then you have free medicals at rural communities. Could you tell us more about some of these added programs to this?
Okay, fantastic. I would say that before it became Elevate Africa, His Royal Majesty Ogiame Atuwashe III and Her Royal Majesty Olori Atuwashe III, they have been vested in their communities strongly. They have invested so much, they have researched so much, and they have a lot of transformation is taking place. So, for example, you pick the SDG goal, talk about education. They've done so much around education. They've invested into early childhood form of education. They have invested into what you will call alternative schools happening. They have invested so much even in the STEM labs across Warri and Delta State. I mean, you see that it started from home. You see, to talk about what Her Majesty Olori Atuashe III has done for the women, through the Royal Iwere Foundation. A lot of medical outreaches have happened, helping people. The scholarships that they have given to a lot of people, in that same kingdom and beyond. So you see that all of these things started from the home, and they have been so vested. I mean, the whole world can say, and you can tell the story, that they have been so transformative in their immediate environment. So that helps you to know that a lot is going on through the Royal Iwere Foundation, and now Elevate Africa, taking it to the next level on how we can deal with policies at higher levels.
All right, let me just go to Mr. Ekunube before we round off this conversation and ask about the rationale behind the theme of this event.
Thank you, Ini. The Africa we see, everything begins with a compelling and a very strong vision. So the basis for this convening is to say, how do you see Africa? What Africa do you see? What is the future of the Africa that you see? What defines a great continent? What defines a great people? And we want to define it in terms of how we elevate leadership, how we elevate governance, how we elevate trade, how we elevate the African narrative, the African story. I remember there was some comment that was made by Philip Emeagwali, where his father asked him, he said, the warrior and the story, which is greater? And he had said the warrior. The father said, no, that is the story, because the one who has a story controls your future. So it's important that Africans are able to tell their own stories and give their own narratives. So African by African. So this one, we need to say, what is the Africa we see? And hear it from leaders who have served, leaders who are currently serving, and then also to inspire the next generation of leaders, and also to move things across and see what level of impact and transformation we can have on the continent. And in fact, we have to ensure that Africa has a strong voice on all global platforms.
So how do people participate in this? What opportunities do they have? What can they do, to be part of it?
So the event is taking place in October. It is going to be a physical event, but it's also going to be a virtual event. So people can join virtually, but beyond that, there will be a series of engagements that will follow through after the event itself. The idea is to raise a generation of Africans who are doing transformative work across various sectors, various industries, and various jurisdictions. And then we'll create like a platform, a backbone organization that allows other frontline entities on the continent and partners and friends of the continent to then layer and then work together collaboratively, to transform various communities and transform the continent. So yeah, it's a call out and a reach out to everyone to say that to take responsibility, ownership in this charge.
All right, thank you so much, gentlemen. Mr. Daniel Ekunebe, the lead consultant for Elevate Africa, and then Dr. Akinpelu, senior consultant to the office of His Majesty Ogami Atuashe III and Her Majesty Olori Atuashe III. Thank you, and wish you the very best, in your event.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Let's take a break now. When we come back, we'll be doing the markets with me. That's after the break. Just stay with us. Welcome back to watching Business Incorporated on Channels Television. We'll head to the markets now and see what's going on right there, especially looking at the NGX. Now, the number has been known. Everybody was waiting for the Fed's cuts. They've cut. It's 50 basis points. Let's see how markets are reacting. It doesn't seem to be very good for the NGX, but we cannot directly link that. As you know, the NGX does not directly respond to all those data. We could say it's profit taking after 2 sessions, positive sessions, in the market, but we're still on to 98,000. So that's a bit of hope right there. 98,162.06 now, down 0.07%. Who knows? There may be a recovery before the close of trade. For South Africa, it's, however, in the green, 1.26% in the green at 83,758.44. Let's look at other parts of Africa. Egypt is positive this afternoon, 1.20%, 30,706.98. While for Kenya closed yesterday. That's the Nairobi Stock Exchange. The Osho Index closed in the positive on Wednesday, 0.67%, 107.27. Let's look at other parts of the world now. I think the big country at this time. Middle East is green, 0.79%, 4,424.87. That's for Dubai. Abu Dhabi also green, 9,443.32, 0.22%. Other parts of the Middle East, the Tada War and Qatar follow suit. We can see green market right there in the Middle East. Now, before we move outside of this, let's see what's happening in Nigeria. Perhaps we missed the factor, or the U.S. Fed cuts factor right there. I don't know, but Vincent will tell us. Vincent Oshoma, a securities dealer and acting managing director, Midpoint Capital Limited, joins us from Lagos. Hi, Vincent. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can we safely say that the U.S. Fed cuts has no impact on the Nigerian market? Can we safely say that?
Yeah, currently you have not seen much impact, but we expect to see impact as things goes on, because once we see a rate cut, definitely it means that investors in the U.S. market start looking at alternative. Nigeria presents a good alternative when you look at the opportunities in our market. So, and that depends on other factors around our FX stability, and that will see how much we see them contributing moving into our market.
So for now, we can say there's not. But I mean, the other issue is, I know at least for Lagos and many states of the country, we've seen a kind of stability in supply of petrol, at least. Dangote has been in the news for months now. I don't know if this is the end of it or we have another shocker coming our way. But some people have connected import crude, or even import of refined products with the issues around Dangote and the demand for FX. Do we see that as a prominent factor at this time, talking about the connection, energy security, and the demand for FX?
Yeah, definitely there is a strong connection between the energy security in terms of fuel importation and FX, because when you look at it, about 40% of the FX demand is for energy importation. So with the arrangement of, with the upcoming of Dangote refineries, I think that will bring stability in terms, because the demand for FX for the fuel importation, that can all be used to service other demands. I think it will definitely help in achieving bringing stability to the FX market, which is also very important for our market. That's why those are some of the things that investors will be looking at. Now the Dangote refinery started producing, and so as things stabilize in the area, which we have seen in terms of supply, definitely improve supply, brings stability, and brings stability also to the FX market, which is definitely, in fact, a lot of sectors in Nigeria, especially the equity markets.
So, I mean, this is actually connected to the Naira. We saw the previous session, the Naira lost about 7%. At the close of trade yesterday, it gained about 7%. But I mean, we can safely say that's connected to the intervention, from the central bank. Are we at a stable place now when we talk about the demand and supply pool of the FX and the value of the Naira?
I think, first of all, the things that we focus of the CBN and also a lot of persons is more about stability, not the kind of volatility we used to see in terms of the FX market. Definitely, we still have some challenge in terms of the level of supply. But I think these issues that we have mentioned, we start kind of bring stability into the market, because when you look at the fact that last month we saw the the dollar bond, the success of the dollar bond, and that's quite important for the market, and also the issue of FX for importation of products. I think these are the things that people will be looking at, and that can help in bringing some level of stability before we now see the improved supply. Because I think the first thing is to avoid too much volatility in the market, and these are things that will help that.
All right, Vincent Oshoma, thank you so much for your time and your views.
Thanks for having me.
So let's see the rest of the market now. United States stock futures jumped on Thursday as traders, of course, digested that Fed cuts. We see the Dow Jones very green, 1.12%. S&P 500 even better than that, 1.52%. On NASDAQ, 2% right there. Nvidia, of course, is still in the news amid shares popped more than 3% each. Micron Technology also traded about 2%. So a lot going on right there after that 50 basis point cut. Now let's go to Asia, where we also expect it to react to the market. So it's no surprise that we see the Nikkei in the green, 2.17%, even though they are yet to regain that 38,000 level that they celebrated a bit ago. Kospi is also in the green, 2% for Hang Seng Index. And looking at other parts of the Asian market, I believe we'll have the Nifty also all looking green there. The Nifty, I beg your pardon, all looking green there, 0.22, and Shanghai also green. So everybody's happy that it was a bigger than expected cuts by the Fed. We hope that is sustainable for that market and others. And I'm sure also in the United Kingdom, which is like a brother to the United States, there's been reactions to that Fed cut. And I think eyes are now turning to the Bank of England. But let's talk to Juliana, our correspondent in the London studio now, on what to expect or what conversations are going on after this rate cut. Hi, Juliana. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Inni. Thank you so much. So we have actually had the English Central Bank meet. They gathered, as usual, at Threadneedle Street this morning. We had the interest rate announcement at noon, local time, and it was as analysts had predicted, and that they've maintained the interest rate at 5%. This follows, of course, a small cut last month. Of course, this comes 24 hours after we had the Federal Reserve rate cut. But I think in the UK, and you're quite right in saying that we are, of course, cousins to our friends across the pond. We've got so many domestic issues, and the Bank of England Governor, Andrew Bailey, spoke about them in the minutes that he delivered just shortly after the rate decision. And he spoke about inflation. And now if we look at inflation in the UK, we got the numbers from the Office for National Statistics yesterday. It's at 2.2%. Now, compared to this time last year, Inni, when we were having this discussion on your show, inflation was at 11%. So we are way clear of those historic highs, but that 2.2% still above the benchmark 2%. And that's what Andrew Bailey is still very cautious of. We are still in quite fragmented geopolitical times in the UK. Lots of economic policy is to do with the weather, and it is getting colder now. And we know that energy bills are going to rise, and that is going to have an upward trajectory on inflation. And that is the reason why the bank decided to keep it at 5%, although it wasn't a unanimous decision. I believe one deputy governor of the central bank did decide or did vote for rates to be reduced. However, there are going to be more interest rate cuts towards the end of the year. At least that's what Andrew Bailey has indicated. However, those inflationary pressures are still persisting, and we are waiting with much abated breath for the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, to deliver her first budget. We've had warnings from Sir Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, that it's going to be tough, right? So I don't think we're out of the woods yet when it comes to the cost of living crisis and trying to manage, inflation and interest rates, because already just before I got into the studio I was listening to the airwaves, and there are lots of people, business owners, particularly in hospitality, who are not happy that interest rates were not cut. They were really looking forward interest rates on their loans to fall down. Lots of businesses in the UK still paying back COVID loans. Of course, when interest rates are elevated, the cost of borrowing is much higher. The reason why banks do that is because, of course, if it costs more to borrow, people spend less. If you spend less, there's less demand. It should push inflation down. That is the goal. But of course, we've seen over the past couple of months that, theory doesn't always implement into an actuality. But Andrew Bailey's telling everyone to hold their horses. Interest rates remain steady at 5%, but let's see what the rest of the quarter brings us.
Yeah, Juliana, a whole lot of things to look out for and count down to before the year ends. So we'll certainly see and expect more cuts. But let's head to the market now. I guess investors should be happy with these 50 basis points cut by the Fed.
You're absolutely right. They are happy all across the shop, including in currencies. I think as soon as that interest rate decision was out, sterling jumped 0.60%, the highest it's jumped since March 2022. And that's reflected in the blue chips as well at intraday. The all share is up by 1.16%, so that's a triple-digit jump. FTSE 100 up by 1.15%, and the FTSE 250. The domestic market inning, that's up by 1.17%. In the currencies market, the British pound is trading high, up against the US dollar by more than 0.5%, up against the euro 2 by 0.03%, and up against the Japanese yen by 0.77% at intraday.
Thank you so much, Juliana. All right, now let's go to Berlin, where the internet all over the world is $1 billion business. But when it comes to the EU, that number doesn't apply to just revenues, but they are fines. So you have companies like the Google, Meta, and others for not complying. They've had to be hit with a lot of fines. Last gives us the update now. I think Google is in the news now. Last.
No, not at all, because this case, again, it was an old case from 2019. That was just one of the cases the company has and had in Brussels. Another one was just decided last week, and it's even more expensive for Google. Last week, the courts backed a fine levied by antitrust regulators 7 years ago. Google has to pay 2.5 billion euros as a fine for various anti-competitive practices. The European Union says that the company has used its own price comparison shopping service to gain an unfair advantage over smaller European rivals. All in all, Google has racked up over 8 billion euros in EU antitrust fines in the last decade. Some are connected to the company's Android mobile operating system. Others include, of course, the AdSense case that I just talked about. Generally, it seems Google will always have some business in EU courts.
Yeah, unfortunately for Google, but thank you so much, Lars, for that. Now let's talk about solar. Solar, everybody's talking about renewable energy, alternative to dirty fuel. In 2022, Statista reported that Africa generated about 3%, or 9%, beg your pardon, of its energy from renewable sources, and solar capacity in Africa, beg your pardon, has grown to 13%. That's between 2019 and 2020. And now, as demand for energy increases, obviously, people are looking outside the norm, which is where that comes in. But did you know that there are some risks also attached to this adoption of solar energy? Well, I found that out recently, and I thought to share that information with you. And so we have Daniel Schneider. He's a senior risk engineer at Alliance Commercial, joins us to tell us about this. Hi, Daniel. Good afternoon. I mean, don't scare me now. We're looking for clean energy, and so we're turning to solar. And now you're telling us that there are also risks that we have to be scared of.
No, so good afternoon to everyone and your viewers, and thanks for having us on your show. The intention behind it is definitely not to say that we need to run away from this technology at all. It definitely poses a great option for power generation and a greener source of energy. It's just with any new technology that is implemented in the market, we need to fully understand this technology before we implement it at large scale, because there could be unknown risks to these technologies. However, the key thing behind it is that these risks can be mitigated. We just need to ensure the mitigation is proactive and it is done from the onset.
So, what advice or tips would you give? Because I see some of the risk, there's natural disaster, there's overloading of roof structures, because obviously those panels stay on the roof, there's fire hazards. What are some of those tips that individuals or even companies should look out for in adopting this alternative energy source?
Thanks, that's a good question. So the key is to understand the application of the PV panels themselves. So the NatCat risks we are seeing on the rise across multiple technologies and loss scenarios. Hail is at the moment one of the largest sort of factors behind losses and one of the largest causes of loss. But also, as you quite correctly point out, there's a large risk of fire as well. Now, this applies to solar farms as well as it applies to solar PV panels that are applied to buildings. Now, you mentioned basic mitigation measures. These come in many forms. A simple one would be just understanding the application. So if you are applying PV panels to a roof, have you checked there's not combustible insulation inside the building? Have you ensured that the roof can withstand the extra loading of the solar panels? So the risk mitigation can take on many forms, being from fire or from natural catastrophes. But again, it's ensuring that prior to the installation, the research is done and the correct professionals are appointed to ensure that you are protected against these risks and not vulnerable to them.
Yeah, but I mean, in a country like Nigeria, you have a lot of individuals who just want to get an alternative because of the challenge with constant power supply from the national grid. Do they have to worry about that? I just want to get 2 panels, a battery or so in my house, so at least I have lights and just a little bit of air. Do I stand a risk of being exposed to this risk that you talked about?
Yes, that's a very good point. We all know that there's many places where we have a lot of challenges across the world. Power is one of them, as you point out. And there's obviously there's need. So like you said, putting bread on the table and keeping the lights on are obviously important to everyone. But the key here is that in the attempt of solving one of your problems, we don't want anybody to create additional problems. So our advice is simple, is to ensure that you abide by the codes in your country and the national or international codes for installation to ensure that by solving one problem, you don't create additional ones.
On there, don't create another problem when you're trying to solve one. But thank you so much, Daniel Schroeder, Senior Risk Engineer at Alliance Commercial. Thank you for those tips. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time. Good day.
All right, now let's go to the crypto space and hope that when they're using solar to mine Bitcoin, they take care that they do capture some of those risks. Because
there's risk with everything at this point.
I know, right? I know. I mean, we're running away. We're running away from the issues around the dirty field, and now we are looking at the risks that also comes with renewables.
Quite interesting. But somebody's on fire today.
I see.
Bitcoin, Ethereum, most of these altcoins are on fire. I guess investors are happy about the rate cuts yesterday, 50 basis points, but some want to know if this pace will continue going forward. That's for other meetings. So headlines now, we see Cardano's founder, that's ADA, Charles Hoskinson, is planning to meet Javier Milei, that's the president of Argentina. I also see Decentralized X account got hacked. Then MicroStrategy again, accumulating more Bitcoin. Let's bring in Rume Dominic now to bring us up to speed. Hello, Rume.
Hello, Ladi. Thank you for having me. I'm grateful.
Great to have you. So we're seeing MicroStrategy again, 4,922 Bitcoins. They've transferred that, most of their accumulations. Talk to me about their strategy here. Why are they accumulating so much Bitcoin?
The reality is Bitcoin is a finite asset, just like you have gold. And with the current way that we're seeing the high level of inflation in the world, economies crashing, global instability, MicroStrategy Bitcoin stockpile is actually turning a lot of heads, It is a high-stake bet on a volatile asset. But hey, fortune favors the bold, right? A lot of other people are trying to be cautious about it. They are eyeing Bitcoin. They have not truly taken that bold step towards it. However, we have seen MicroStrategy take the lead, and this lead that they have taken, we are hopeful that it pays them in the long run.
Well, what if you end up accumulating all of this Bitcoin and sometime in the future it's worth nothing?
The reality is we always live, life itself is a risk. You really don't know what happens in the next few hours from now. But however, we try to take calculated risk. With the advance of digital technologies and the fact that we know that the future is digital, I mean, we're having this particular conversation over the digital space. The reality is there would always be a need for products and services that will satisfy the digital population, that will be shifting away from the normal norm of cash or fiat system that we have. And this has come in the form of Bitcoin. And this is something that we must all now collectively look at to be able to see that what is the innovation that we can do on it to see how we can build the future and leave a platform for the next generation.
All right, we're all looking forward to that future. But we see Cardano, the founder of that's ADA, is set to meet Argentina's president, Javier Milei. Do you think Argentina will become the next Bitcoin adopter? That's the government.
Ladi, Cardano's founder meeting Argentina's president is intriguing. You know, Milei's Bitcoin Pro stance suggests there is a potential for some Bitcoin-friendly moves. There's actually this particular joke of will Argentina become the next El Salvador? Truly, it's possible, but don't hold your breath. There are a lot of economic and political hurdles to overcome before that would happen. And remember, talk is cheap, right?
Right. So definitely a lot to look out for. You know, government, politics, Bitcoin getting involved in most of these things now with what Trump is doing. You know, with Bitcoin. But we're seeing Bitcoin really bullish right now. What are you seeing going into the weekend? More bullish sentiment?
Ladi, come again. I didn't hear you.
Do you see more bullish sentiment going into the weekend with what we're seeing with Bitcoin right now?
You know, there's a popular saying in the financial market that sell in September and buy all you've sold in September just before you get into October. The reality is that as of today, the price of Bitcoin is at $62,000, which is a very good uptrend from the $57,000 that it was 2 days ago. We're also seeing that by the end of this September, the Binance founder there's a possibility that he will be released from prison as well. And these are news, especially with Donald Trump. Also, Donald Trump bought his first Bitcoin yesterday at one of the Bitcoin public pubs. And these are actually good indicators to a bullish season for us. And you know, with the 4 cycles that we have in Bitcoin, where you have the cycle of the crash, the reset, the halving, we're currently at the cycle of the halving because we just experienced the Bitcoin halving. We are going into the next cycle of the peak, the Bitcoin peak. And this is the phase of the bull run. Nothing can stop it.
Right. We're definitely watching out for that. Thank you so much, Rume Dominic, Deputy Managing Director, Aviat Industries. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Ladi.
All right. So, there you have it, Donald Trump.
This is the face of the bull run and nothing can stop it.
Yeah, according to Rume. But
that's so confident.
Donald Trump buying something from a market with Bitcoin. Maybe John McQuarrie buying something with Bitcoin at some supermarket. We'll see if that happens.
We'll see. Thank you so much, Ladi. Well, that's it on the program. This is where you get all the information, keeping you abreast of what's going on. And remember, you can always watch this program at any time that you want on our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/channels web. And then you look for Business Money, you look for Business Incorporated, and stay informed at any time. We'll do this again tomorrow. But tomorrow will be just you and I. Oh, we'll have Will back. Join me tomorrow. I'm John McClure.